Hey, what's up guys, MerganMan4 here, and today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts and opinions on episode 6 of series 12, Praxeus, written by Pete McTighe and Chris Chibnall. Praxeus is Pete McTighe's second contribution to the show after Kerblam last season, which was personally my favorite episode of Series 11. So I was pretty excited to see what he would do for this season. And while I don't think it was quite as good as Kerblam, and honestly it's on the lower end of Series 12 episodes for me, I still think it was a really solid episode and a lot of fun, and I'm glad that Pete McTighe could contribute again. It's also interesting to note that this episode, though, is co-written by Chris Chibnall, and I'm not entirely sure why. I guess I just have to assume probably that it's just Chibnall did enough reworking of the script that he felt he deserved a credit on it. I think a similar thing happened with Rosa last season, because unlike last week with Fugitive of the Judoon, which is incredibly arc-heavy, this episode, honestly, I don't even think references the arc at all, so it definitely wasn't anything to do with that. But I think for some people it might have been jarring to go from something so continuity-heavy to something that is like completely independent. I don't mind that, and to be honest, I think that's just kind of the nature of Doctor Who. It's not supposed to be all arc-heavy every week, and I actually was glad that it was like that, because I don't want it to be arc-heavy every week, and so it's kind of refreshing to have something more independent after something so, heavy with like arc stuff and continuity last week. So I thought that was good that it was a bit more simpler in that regard. Although I have to say, even though it wasn't complex in terms of arc, there was a lot going on in Praxeus, because not only are we jumping around the world a lot, we visit Peru, we go to Hong Kong, we've also got Madagascar, middle of the Indian Ocean. We're jumping around the world a lot, which I did find jarring at first. I found it kind of, I don't know, it took me out of the story a bit near the beginning when we kept jumping between these locations, although it did settle down a bit later. But in addition to those, we also have a bunch of different characters who have pretty significant roles in the episode. So not only do we have our 4 main cast, we've also got 4 guest characters who have pretty big roles. So it's a lot of characters to balance. But I will say, if there's any writer to tackle this many characters, I'm glad it was Pete McTighe, because I don't think it's a coincidence. Both Kerblam and now Praxeus are easily the best use of having 3 companions, and of course both of them were written by Pete McTighe. While I think there are a couple of episodes that Chibnall's wrote that utilized all 3 companions pretty decently, I would say The Woman Who Fell to Earth and Spyfall Part 1 were pretty good with 3 companions. Kerblam and Praxeus are the only ones that like really knocked it out of the park and actually definitely made all 3 companions be a benefit to the story rather than a detriment. Pete McTighe is the reason that I fully believe 3 companions can work if done well. It's just hard, and unfortunately I think most writers just aren't up to the task. But yeah, like none of the companions feel sidelined here. They all have their own specific roles that they're, need to fulfill. They all feel, like an important part of the plot. They're not just there along for the ride. And that's great. I'm really glad that McTighe can do that and actually give a purpose to all 3 companions. One thing that I was especially surprised about is this is probably the biggest episode we've had for Yaz, because she has her own little mini adventure, kind of almost like she's the Doctor. She even has her own essentially companion going with her. Where at near the beginning of the episode, she and Graham are investigating this building that's giving off strange energy readings, and in the process they encounter some aliens, and Yaz realizes there's a piece of technology there that seems pretty important to them. She doesn't have time to grab it, but she tells the Doctor that she wants to go back and grab it, and when the Doctor says, well, we don't have time to, Yaz says, you go do what you need to do, I'm going to do it by myself. And this led to this whole subplot throughout the episode where she was, without the Doctor's help, or the other companions' help, just one of the new guest characters for the episode. She goes back to retrieve the tech, but actually ends up discovering what she believes to be the aliens' base. And yeah, it's the most Yaz has ever had to do in an episode, and she was very independent here. Definitely some of the most personality she's ever had as well. So that was really great to see, and it genuinely did shock me. Ryan and Graham are good as well. They probably don't have quite as much to do as Yaz, but they've still got their, good moments. Graham has this really lovely conversation with another one of the guest characters, Jake, basically just talking about his marriage and kind of developing his character more, and he just kind of provides this pillar of support for him. And Ryan is the one who he kind of helps, figure out what's wrong with the birds in the episode. Actually, I didn't even mention yet, there are angry birds that start attacking people, and it's also an environmental episode. So it's kind of like a Doctor Who does Birdemic sort of thing, except without exploding birds and birds that spit acid and terrible visual effects. It's basically the basic plot of Birdemic done well, which I think is kind of amusing. But I did think that the birds were kind of odd in that they were all the same kind of bird, whether they were in like Peru or Madagascar, and they were, I'm not entirely sure why they were attacking people. I think it was said because they were infected with the virus. Actually, yeah, I don't even think I mentioned either. The main thread of this episode is this alien virus that's attacking people and the birds. But it's kind of odd that they were all the same bird, and then they're just kind of like flying around in flocks, and then suddenly they just go after like a single person or something. We don't really see anything of a bigger scale, which I can understand why they didn't, but it is kind of odd. The closest we get is when the birds attack the group as a whole, but none of them get hurt from that, so the birds just felt kind of weird because they were just normal birds. So, I don't know, I thought that was odd. But the whole point of the virus is that it attacks plastics. And so it's infecting the birds because they're filled with plastic because they're accidentally eating plastic from the ocean, but it's also attacking humans who only seem to get infected by the birds, as far as I could tell, because we've produced so much plastic that it can't get fully broken down, and so as a result there are microplastics all around us and we end up consuming them all the time, so the virus starts going after us and attacking the microplastics within our body. And so this, like I said, it's an environmental episode. It's kind of a message against pollution, and as I've previously mentioned before, a lot of people are for some reason averse to political messaging in Doctor Who, which is very odd, but there was a lot of outcry against Orphan 55, even including from me. This episode handled its political messaging so much better because it actually felt integrated as part of the plot, and it benefited the story that it was telling. And I think it actually worked really well in this episode. I thought that this was a really, well done environmental message within the episode itself, because it never feels like the episode stops to tell you about it. Like, it feels like a natural progression from the story. I've also mentioned we have a pretty decent amount of guest characters who take on bigger roles in the episode. We have Gabriella, who's from Peru. She's a travel vlogger, and the person that she vlogs with has gotten killed at the beginning of the episode, so she's just trying to take all this in and comprehend it. Ultimately, she doesn't really do much. I actually don't really know what her purpose is, other than to give the Peru location a specific character, but she was fine. For some reason, I keep seeing online that she's being set up to become a companion for Series 13, and I don't really know why. I find that kind of strange. But even if she was, personally, I found Jake a lot more of a compelling character. He's definitely the guest character who got the most development throughout the episode, and I definitely think he's the character that would have the most potential as a companion. He's not... You know what, that's the other thing too. I feel like Gabriella is more generic. She's just kind of your standard kind of companion material, if she were to become a companion. But Jake, we've never really had a companion like him before, so I feel like he would be a lot more unique and interesting to explore as a companion. And so anyway, he was a police officer, but he's kind of taken a break from it, and he kind of struggles with life not being a police officer, and he doesn't like travel. He struggles with commitment, so he's definitely the most complex guest character of the story, and I really enjoyed him all throughout it. His husband also plays a pretty big role in the episode. He's an astronaut, Adam Lang, and at the beginning of the episode he crash lands, and he's missing, presumed dead, but somehow, I don't know how, but whatever, he sends a text to Jake to come and get him, revealing he's in Hong Kong, and it turns out he's being experimented on by the aliens, and he has this alien virus. And so a lot of the plot is driven by them trying to find a cure for him, and then by extension through that cure for humanity to stop the Praxeus virus from spreading. After retrieving Adam, they go to Madagascar, where the doctor has already made contact with the characters Suki and Aramu. Aramu is kind of disposed of pretty quickly. He doesn't get to do a whole lot before he dies from the birds. But Suki, she has this lab on Madagascar that they use to help develop the cure. But it turns out the reason she's so well equipped there is that she's actually one of the aliens. And it turns out that the Praxeus virus had destroyed her entire species, and she was part of a scientific crew sent out to try and find a cure. And it's later revealed that they chose Earth as a testing ground, so they brought the virus to Earth to experiment with and try and find a cure. Unfortunately for her, she is dying from Praxeus, and she tries to take the cure that they've developed for Adam, but since she's not human, it doesn't work, and she ends up dying from it. But the cure that they developed for Adam does work for him, and he ends up being successfully revived. And so they end up using Suki's ship to go up into the stratosphere and dispense the cure onto the Earth. And the world is saved from Praxeus. And unfortunately, all the aliens, they weren't able to get a cure, and it's implied that they all died from Praxeus. And then for some reason the doctor drops all of them off in Madagascar, even though Gabriella is from Peru, and then the other two are from the UK. I don't know why she brought them there, but okay, sure. But aside from that awkward resolution there at the very end, yeah, it was quite the enjoyable story. A lot of fun, and honestly, I think, as I mentioned with the political messaging before, I think it's probably one of the best told political stories in terms of weaving in the message with the actual, fictional story itself. Yeah, I thought that was, I thought it was really well done. I also want to mention that this episode, in particular, I mean this series as a whole, but this episode in particular, the TARDIS interior is actually really looking good. Like, it's the most dynamic this interior has ever looked. I'm not sure who directed this episode, but they're really making use of, giving this interior more of a personality. It was admittedly pretty bland in Series 11, and they did do some design changes, like for Series 12, that have definitely helped, but we spent a decent amount of time in the TARDIS in this episode, and we're getting all sorts of interesting camera angles and seeing this TARDIS in ways that we haven't seen it before. And it really gives it a whole new lease of life, I guess, and much more of a personality than it had before. So whoever directed this did a really good job in, making that happen and actually making use of this TARDIS interior in a new and unique way. So good on them. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about Praxeus. It's not a remarkable episode necessarily, but like I said, it's a pretty fun one, and it's pretty enjoyable. I had a good time with it. And it's probably, Yeah, I would say it's my least favorite episode of Series 12 that is actually good. Unlike Orphan 55. It's probably on par, I would say, with most of Series 11's episodes for me, if not a little bit better. But yeah, it's good. It's just your standard good Doctor Who story. So I think I'm going to be giving Praxeus a 7.5 out of 10, which would bring our series average up to 7.3. But yeah, those are my thoughts and opinions on Praxeus. Next week we have Can You Hear Me, which looks like a proper scary episode. I'm really looking forward to that one. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please leave your thoughts and opinions on the episode down in the comments below. And yeah, Burgerman 4 over and out. And I'll see you guys later.